Cloning in Warhammer 40K is a very old science that humans once understood very well during the dark age of technology. Back then, people could copy or grow new humans, soldiers, or even enhance super warriors with almost no mistakes. But when the Age of Strife came and human civilization collapsed all across the galaxy, almost all of that knowledge was lost. Only broken pieces of the technology survived, and most of the important steps like removing harmful mutations from the blood or keeping the gene material pure were forgotten. Because of this, any cloning done in later ages became dangerous, unpredictable, and filled with horrible side effects and mutations. In the current Imperium, in the current era, cloning still exists, but it is crude, unstable, and heavily restricted. The Adeptus Mechanicus can make vat-grown humans, but they are mostly used as servitors and not as normal Imperial Guard troops or Space Marines. Mutations, madness, extra limbs, claws, and unstable personalities are common. This is why attempts like the replicae projects or the cloning of Lord Solar Macharius ended in disaster. Even so, though cloning does still happen, it is not yet trusted, not precise, and seen as dangerous or even heresy. But it still happens nonetheless. So let's take a look at 9 armies or groups of warriors that are clones that were made by humans of the Imperium and other humans of other factions. Let's get to it. Okay, the first one was referenced in both the Final Index Astartes and the Deliverance Lost novel. Here, after the terrible losses at the Is-15 drop site massacre, the Raven Guard Legion was almost destroyed. Corvus Corax went to the Emperor and asked about the forgotten genetic technology that could rapidly grow new Astartes. The Emperor agreed and gave Corax access to ancient gene labs on Terra, along with the needed technology and knowledge for speed cloning. At first, the results were amazing. The first batch of new Raven Guard Marines developed their organs in just a few hours and became fully trained. They were strong warriors in a matter of days. But everything fell apart when the Alpha Legion secretly interfered. Some Alpha Legionnaires had disguised themselves as Raven Guard survivors from Is-15 and slipped into Corax's forces. They helped Omegon, one of the twin Primarchs of the Alpha Legion, sneak into the gene labs to steal the technology for himself. At the same time, they sabotaged Corax's work. The first group of Marines came out perfectly, but the second and third groups began to warp and mutate. Corax didn't know that it was sabotage. He believed that he had failed and that the ancient science was now too unstable to use, and so he shut it all down. So we could have had a Raven Guard clone army if it wasn't for the Alpha Legion. Another example is from the Horus Heresy. Some Blackshield Warbands, which are groups of lost, damaged, or renegade Space Marines with no Legion identity, tried to use cloning to quickly build up their numbers. They used rough, incomplete versions of the old gene tech, hoping to make fast replacements for their fallen warriors. At first it seemed useful. They could create large groups of clone Astartes in a short time without needing new recruits or proper training. But the process was crude and unstable. The results were tragic. These clone warriors came out mentally broken. Most of them could barely think for themselves, acting more like stumbling, confused drones than real Space Marines. They lacked discipline, strategy, and the emotional strength that normally comes from years of training and bonding with a legion. Physically, their bodies were twisted, and even with mutations, that cloning methods were incomplete and dangerous to, take care of. Instead of gaining a reliable army, the Black Shields ended up with dangerous, barely functional troops who often caused as many problems as they solved. Now fast forwarding to M41. After a series of disaster and near civil wars, the Blood Angels and their successor chapters were almost out of Space Marines. Desperate to save his chapter and the successor ones, Dante allowed the apothecaries to study an ancient way of cloning new Space Marines. But the early tests failed them, and Dante then ordered the project to stop. However, one sanguinary priest called Cacus continued in secret and eventually created the first single clone that he called the Blood Child, and then a lot of them which were eventually put in stasis. What Cacus didn't really know was that he had been tricked by Fabius Bile, who wanted access to Blood Angel genetics for his own evil experiments, and then also released the unfinished clones, calling them Blood Fiends. These were primitive at first, but then with every sip of blood, they grew stronger, faster, and smarter. They were like vampiric clones. Their bodies changed quickly, their skin darkened, their teeth turned into fangs, their limbs grew extra joints and thin bat-like membranes which allowed them to glide in the air in a limited way. Their skin became tough enough to survive multiple hits from bolter rounds. Worst of all, their hunger for blood was endless. Led by an alpha clone, The Blood Fiends storm across the fortress monastery, killing Astartes, stealing their armor and weapons, and then growing more dangerous with every drop of blood they consume. Their rampage reached the Sanguinary Chapel, where the sacred Red Grail, which holds the blood of the Primarch Sanguinus himself, was kept. The Alpha Clone drank it dry, becoming even more dangerous and monstrous. Dante and his warriors fought desperately to stop the Blood Fiends, and in the end, Sergeant Raffin killed the Alpha Clone right in front of the sarcophagus of Sanguinius, and the Blood Angels wipe out every last one of them, ending that disaster and also cloning with it. Now the fourth example is the Afriel strained, the regiments of these. These were specifically engineered soldiers created by mysterious scientists of the Imperium who wanted to build the perfect guardsmen. They used genetic material from some of the Imperium's greatest heroes like Lord Solar Macharius to try to clone troops who were stronger, faster and smarter than normal humans. In the beginning, the experiments seemed to work, because Afriel soldiers were extremely skilled in battle and often won their early fights with ease. But the regiments would suffer from bad luck and meet an eventual destruction in one way or another. The soldiers were always pale and albino, with white hair, milk-colored eyes, and skin like chalk. And other natural-born soldiers instantly disliked them or distrusted them, and they always felt uneasy around them. Even worse, Afriel suffered from terrible, almost supernatural bad luck. After their short streak of victories, disaster always struck. Their regiments would fall apart, fail missions, or be completely destroyed. Still, their creators, who are mysterious, continue to secretly make more Afriel regiments, hoping one day the curse or whatever strange force follows them around will finally break. Now the next example here is a little bit controversial because we're talking about the Death Corps of Krieg. See, many people believe that a large number of Death Corps Krieg soldiers are actually clones grown in special machines called vitae wombs, and it makes sense when you look at their history, and they're not really completely wrong. After Krieg destroyed itself in a terrible nuclear civil war, the planet became almost impossible to live on, with toxic air, ruined cities, and very few surviving families. But the Imperium demanded huge numbers of soldiers from the Krieg every year, far more than normal human birth rates could support. To meet these impossible demands, Krieg scientists used vitae wombs to quickly create babies in controlled tanks, shaping them to be strong, obedient, and ready to endure the harsh, deadly lifestyles expected of Death Corps troops. These vat-born children grow up knowing nothing except discipline, hardship, and loyalty to the Emperor, and let's face it, these are clones. Because of this, Krieg can send tens of millions of soldiers to the Imperial Guard every year, even though their world is a ruined wasteland. While the Adeptus Mechanicus finds the cloning process a little bit disturbing, they tolerate it because Krieg's never-ending supply of grim, fearless soldiers is far too valuable to lose. Okay, number 6. Here we have the Goliaths of Necromunda. See, the vat-born Goliaths are an example of how extreme cloning can create an entire abhuman strain. In-house Goliaths, which are one of the lesser houses in Necromunda, most workers and fighters are not born naturally at all. Instead, they are grown in giant amnio-vats, and these are grown from modified flesh templates, which means they're effectively clones. These templates were designed to make Goliaths huge, muscular, and able to survive the brutal lower levels of hive primers, where the heat, pollution, and toxic fumes would kill most people instantly. The cloning process focuses on strength and size above everything else, so vat-born Goliaths often grow to be even bigger than Space Marines, with massive bodies made for lifting, fighting, and enduring pain. But this unnatural growth comes with a price. The rushed, artificial way that they are created shortens their lives to less than a decade, and the genetic tempering often causes mental instability, slow thinking, or difficulty in learning new skills. To make sure they can function at all, they receive data slugs in their skulls that implant basic knowledge of their role and loyalty to their house. Many outsiders consider vat-born Goliaths an abhuman race, but in truth, they are a genetically modified clone human workforce. Oh yeah, and also warriors of the gangs of Necromunda. Now number 7 we have here is the Adeptus Mechanicus combat servitors. So one of the most overlooked clones are those of the Mechanicus itself. See, servitors are workers and soldiers created by the Adeptus Mechanicus and by the Imperium at large, by taking humans, wiping their minds, and turning them into half-robot helpers. While many of these are genetically engineered, vat-grown or clone replicae created from human genomes who have their bionic implants installed after birth, many others were also truly once human, either unlucky ones or criminals taken by the Imperium and given to the Ad Mech. Combat Servitors and Bile Servitors exist in the millions or tens of millions in any forge world of the Mechanicus, and as such, they represent an army of clones, vat-grown humans, commanded by half-cyborg overlords who serve the Omnissiah. This makes vat-grown servitors very useful to the Mechanicus, who see human bodies as just another tool to build, to change, control, as just another cog in the entire engine, the entire system. Now heading out of the Imperium and landing in the City of Dust, here we have the Yellow King's clone army. See, in the novel Penitent, the King in Yellow commands some of the strangest and most disturbing creations ever seen in the Inquisition novels, like clone Blanks and clone Winged Space Marines, both of which reveal how deeply he has dug into forbidden genecraft, into warp lore and lost technologies that even the Adeptus Mechanicus fears. The clone Blanks are perhaps his most dangerous tools. A Blank is a rare human born without a soul, creating a psychic death zone that repels demons, sorcery and even normal psychers. But natural Blanks are incredibly rare, so the King in Yellow used stolen cognitive science and darker methods to mass produce these artificial nulls. Even stranger are clone Winged Space Marines. These Astartes have organic angelic wings, kinda like those of Sanguinius. Their existence suggests a horrific breakthrough, as the King in Yellow might have found a way to copy or corrupt gene templates connected to Primarch level physiology. The existence of these is why nearly every major faction, from Chaos Legions to Eldar Craftworlds, want the King in Yellow destroyed before he can unleash an army of soulless soldiers and angelic Super Astartes upon the galaxy. Number 9. The Clones of Bile. Fabius Bile is a mad scientist of the Warhammer 40K universe, and he loves creating life in the most dangerous and twisted ways possible. Over thousands of years, he has grown entire armies of clones using stolen DNA from famous heroes and villains. Some of his most shocking creations were his clone Primarchs, which are copies of the Emperor's super sons. But none of these clones ever lived up to the original, and many either went insane, rebelled against him, or were destroyed by Abaddon and the Black Legion. Fabius Bile also creates the New Men, which are stronger, faster and smarter than normal humans, but it is debatable if they are clones or not. Fabius Bile himself stays alive by cloning his own body and jumping his mind or his consciousness into each new version every time he dies, because his original body and every other clone is infected with a horrible warp super cancer that always grows back. No matter what he does, even letting the Drukhari tear his body apart and clean him to the bone, the sickness returns because it is basically a living curse made from the emotions of his own followers and from the warp. So in the end, Fabius Bile commands armies of clones while also being trapped in a never-ending cycle of cloning himself, always trying to stay one step ahead of death. And of course we end this with the Leagues of Votann. Now just to be clear, the squads and the kin of the Votann are different in one key aspects. The squads are natural-born ab-humans which are found in Necromunda and other hive worlds, while the kin of the Votann are kinda like squads in their physiology, but they are all clones. Their bodies and minds are built using advanced cloning methods from the Dark Age of technology, giving them improved strength, sharp eyesight, fast reflexes and even the ability to heal quickly. As such, their kin hosts, or their armies, are entirely a clone army, and these high-tech soldiers fight side by side with the Iron Kin, which are like the Men of Iron. Both are bonded by loyalty and tradition to each other. Together they fight to protect their strongholds, to gather vital resources and defend their leagues from enemies. The kin hosts are supported by elite champions, powerful leaders, heavy machines and skilled engineers, all working together like a tightly connected clone family, which is pretty strange, and this is where we end this topic. So now do hit the like button for support, and also for the ones holding their phones in their hands, if you can see the hype option, then press the hype option to, push this content further. Also subscribe to be a part of Legion Nutbug. So till the next time, take care, boys.